Okay, I'm fiddling around here. It's giving me a hard time here. The phone. Okay. Boker Tov. Good morning, everybody. And a happy Chanukah. As we always begin with a bracha, with saying a blessing on our coffee. Here we go. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam sha'akol niyeh b'dvarei. So today, we're going to give a shorter class because there's a lot of Facebooking, a lot of live classes going on and events between all the Chanukah events. Tonight, God willing, we look forward 6 o'clock to the Chanukah parade, and we'll end up at the Sportsplex, and of course, please join us. The event at the Sportsplex is inside cars. Everybody stays in, with a nice presentation that's going to happen at the park that you could see from the comfort of your car. So I want to share a short Chanukah message, as we always learn this time of the week, Sunday morning, L'chaim again. And the message is Azoi. Chanukah is a beautiful Yom Tov, a beautiful holiday. But like everything else in life, there is the more superficial element and there's the deeper element of that which we see and that which we celebrate. Now, I have wonderful memories, as I'm sure you do, listening to this class of Chanukah. And I want to preface, before I share the memories, with a question that is asked in commentaries that discuss the holidays, the Jewish holidays, and so on. There is the following question, a fairly known question, which is, why is it that on Chanukah, the celebration primarily is in more of a spiritual sense? Meaning, there is, let's step back for a moment. There are 3 biblical holidays. What are the 3 biblical holidays? Passover, Sukkot, and Shavuot. Okay? 3 biblical holidays. There's 2 what's called Days of Awe, Yomim Noraim, which is Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. So if you want to include that, we'll say there's 5 biblical special days. Then there are 2 holidays which were enacted by the rabbis post-biblical era, which are Chanukah and Purim. But there's a very clear difference of how we celebrate Purim versus how we celebrate Chanukah. Purim is a very physical, sort of material-related celebration. We have an obligation to have a meal. We say l'chaim. We give gifts of food. Mishloach manot. We exchange baskets of food. It's a very festive day in terms of its rules of how you're supposed to celebrate the day. It's a mitzvah on Purim to have a festive meal. It's a mitzvah on Purim. It's an obligation, the Talmud tells us, to have some wine. Chayav Adam lepsuma b'Purim. A person has to drink wine on Purim. By contrast, on Chanukah, there is no obligation to have any meal, any physical expression of the holiday. The fact that we have latkes or donuts, these are more customs that have developed later on, because a Jewish holiday always ends up somehow focusing on food, as the famous line, every Jewish holiday can be summed up in 9 words, I believe it is. They wanted to kill us, we won, let's eat. But in truth, Chanukah is the only holiday where there is no obligation to have a meal or any physical or material expression of the holiday. Again, latkes, donuts, custom. But what is the mitzvah? The mitzvah is to light a menorah. The mitzvah is to add in our prayers the Al Hanissim, where we thank God for the miracle of Chanukah. The mitzvah is that we add the Hallel prayer after the Amidah. But these are all more spiritual expressions. Why the difference? Why the distinction between Chanukah and Purim? And one of the known explanations is from one of the commentaries on the Code of Jewish Law called the Levush. The Levush Ha'oira. The Levush says the following. He says, the reason for this is because Purim, the threat and danger to the Jewish people was primarily physical. Primarily, they were threatened with extinction. Haman, the wicked Haman, as the Megillah tells us, wanted to wipe out every single Jew, minar v'ad zokein, taf v'noshim, from elder to younger, male, female, regardless of whether you were a threat militarily or similar. Every single Jew is what Haman wanted to eradicate, to exterminate, to get rid of. By contrast, Chanukah, the threat and the decree against the Jewish people was not against their physical existence, but it was against the spiritual adherence to Torah, to mitzvahs, to religion. That was what the Greeks wanted to stamp out. If you are a mityaven, if you are a Hellenist, if you are a Jew that has accepted the Greek way, they had no qualm with you. You were not under any type of danger. And more specifically, even if you learned Torah or you fulfilled mitzvahs because you found it stimulating, culturally nice, culturally exciting, etc., they didn't have a problem. As the words are very carefully chosen and express the idea in the Al Hanisim, it's Lilmo Torah Techa. If it's Jew sat down and studied Torah because it's God's Torah. If a Jew went ahead and did a mitzvah because it's God's mitzvah, not because it's a nice thing to do. I'm giving charity because it's good to be kind. I'm honoring my parents because why not? They deserve my honor. But that they were okay with. But if I did so because God Almighty commanded us to do this particular mitzvah, or this Torah is God's wisdom, that's where their main opposition was. So it was a spiritual battle of accepting the Greek culture versus Jewish culture, but rooted in the understanding that it's not just culture, Jewish culture, but it is Hashem's, God's commandment to our people. And incidentally, there is a parallel to this even in modern times. The difference between what we saw in during World War II, where we had Hitler, Yamach Shemo, may his name be eradicated, and you had the Germans versus the Russians, whereas the Germans, basically, if they discovered that you had any Jewish blood, they got rid of you. In fact, there were high-ranking officials in the army, in the German army, who were very, very instrumental in Germany's victory during World War I. But if it was discovered that they had Jewish blood, geendigt, all done, finished. You were exterminated. And sometimes when Nazis wanted to get even with someone, a superior or someone that they didn't like, they would research and find out if that the fellow had Jewish blood, and that was the end of the story. Phone keeps on ringing. Sorry. Whereas if we if we compare that to the Russian threat to the Jewish people, the communists, they had no issue if you were Jewish. In fact, as we know, Trotsky and others who were very high up in the Russian hierarchy, government, etc., were of Jewish identity. There's even some research going on that General Zhukov, who led the Russian forces to defeat the Germans, there is research going on. It has not yet been established that he might have been Jewish, which is an amazing discovery if that's true. And I say this based on some personal insight that I know into the background of the family. And we're waiting for certain papers to perhaps establish this. Remember, you heard it here, perhaps first. But the problem with the opposition, the war of the communists, was against Judaism. It wasn't against Jews. And that's the story of Chanukah and Purim. That's why we have those two celebrations, because that sums up the challenges that we have faced throughout history. Sometimes it is against the very existence of the Jewish people, physically, and sometimes against our belief system. Chanukah, of course, we celebrate the miracle of the Maccabees against the Greeks and against the Hellenists. And the reason why that is so important to know and understand in today's day and age, because ironically, today Chanukah itself has in many circles or in many modes of celebration become exactly what Chanukah was meant to defeat. Exactly what the real celebration of Chanukah is. In other words, we're excited and we get carried away with the culture of Chanukah, with the beauty of Chanukah in terms of its cultural expression, and we do so sometimes in a way that actually is the opposite of the religious and the true reason of the Chanukah celebration. I want to give an example. I want to give a practical example. One of the things that's become more and more popular is Chanukah gifts. There is no origin, to the best of my knowledge. I stand to be corrected, but to the best of my knowledge, there is no origin in Jewish traditional Torah writings for Chanukah gifts. There is Chanukah gelt. Chanukah gelt, and I don't mean the chocolate gelt. It's nice, it's delicious, all fine and good. But the origin for Chanukah gelt is because Chanukah is related to the word chinuch, which means education. And it was a time that there was a focus put on the fact that we want to highlight and reward our children for good Torah education. And therefore, on Chanukah, we would give them Chanukah gelt. Somehow, gifts have become the issue, the expression by many, not by all, and I suspect that is an influence or from outside influences to try to perhaps be like the culture around us, to be like some of the commercialization of the holiday season. So that's how gifts have crept into the world of Chanukah. But that's not what Chanukah is. Chanukah is about, as we say in Al Hanisim, Rabim b'yad ma'atim, the many in the hands of the few. And that doesn't only mean militarily. It means that we as Jews have our morals, principles, and our beliefs rooted in the teachings of Torah. And even though we are the few, we are not shaken by that. We're not intimidated by that. We don't need to be attracted by the sort of outside culture. We are proud and connected and educate both ourselves and our family and children by the traditions of our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents for thousands of years. We have so much beauty in that. And that's what Chanukah is about. It's the spiritual, godly, holy aspect of Judaism that the victory of Chanukah represents. So I hope the point is being made clear, because more and more do we see sometimes that Chanukah has become just another holiday because there are holidays out there and we also need a holiday. So besides the fact that Chanukah preceded some of the other holidays, and besides the fact that it is really a great thing for societies to celebrate the holidays that they have, which is fantastic and wonderful, and I'm not trying to diminish that or undermine that. It's just a beautiful thing. But we have Chanukah not as a replacement. We have Chanukah because Chanukah is the time when we celebrate the Rabim b'yad ma'atim, that we have our own beautiful heritage rooted in the teachings of Torah, in the word of Hashem, and that's what we're proud of, and that's what we must and need to pass on to our children for us to survive and thrive and love our Jewish tradition. So that's the short message for today, Chanukah message, an important message, and thank you for participating in that. I remember I started to talk about some of the fond memories. So one of the special memories, it's not one, it's very much part of my Chanukah memories. Talking about spirituality, is that every single Chanukah, especially as a yeshiva student, we would go out to the streets of New York, to the Bronx, to Queens, to Manhattan, all over the place, and we would just stand for hours and hours, either in front of mitzvah tanks or knock on doors and hand out menorahs for Chanukah. Because again, the critical element of Chanukah is the menorah. That's the spiritual. The candle represents the spiritual message of Chanukah. So here again, I'm saying this again to underscore the point just mentioned, and also that we here at Chabad of Coral Springs this year have ordered over 1,000 menorahs for distribution to anybody who does not have a candle menorah. So please feel comfortable to either stop by or let us know. We could make sure that you get a menorah and spread the menorah and this beautiful message of Chanukah, which is so vital and important. Everybody, I hope you will join us either in person or virtually for the Chanukah Menorah Parade, a parade that brings light to the city of Coral Springs, that brings pride, Jewish pride, to the city of Coral Springs. I hope you will join us tonight at 6 o'clock and have a fantastic and wonderful Chanukah.